Is it just me?
I think it's
I'm,
just you. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Yeah,
just me.
it
I'm
is.
gonna I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Chris. I'm a music therapist and educator in Kentucky. I work at the University of Louisville. I've been in this role for a few years now, and I feel like I'm officially no longer a new professional because I feel like I'm lying when I say like, yeah, yeah, it was not that long ago. And it's starting to be like that long ago, which is crazy because Jess was one of my internship supervisors. Um, so yeah, I teach at a bachelor's level university and so we have bachelor's and equivalency level students. That's kind of like what my background is from an education standpoint. Before that, I was doing a lot of medical music therapy in my early career. I was at the University of Kentucky Healthcare. And then after that, I worked at Advent Health, formerly Florida Hospital, for several years. And that's where I got bit by the community music therapy bug. So my approach, I would say, is community music therapy centered. Um, and that brought me back to wanting to work at University of Louisville and help run our music therapy clinic there because it's nonprofit, sliding scale, and even after that, we dug even more into that idea of embedding community music therapy principles in what we do. And now I do what Jess was helping me do when I first moved back. So now I just kind of help them steer the ship and get grant funding and occasionally get to do fun stuff and play with them. But they're doing all that stuff. And I'm in the classroom and I teach some classes across all the grade levels. And I stumbled in, if you read like what we're talking about tonight, we're talking about specifications, grading. I hope to kind of like I don't want to like blitz. I don't want to rush, but I hope to go through the material hopefully in a quick-ish manner so that really I know a lot of you all here will probably have some questions. I'm assuming several of you will have heard and thought about, maybe even used or be much more experienced than me with like any standards-based gradings approaches. But basically, yeah, just tell you a little bit about this one specific type of standards-based grading approach called specifications grading that I've like put my stake in the like my flag is firmly planted in specifications grading. Um, and I've got a lot of reasons why I think it's great. If you don't think it's great, that's totally cool. I think you could, this doesn't have to change your life. You're not going to hurt my feelings like one bit because I think there is one of the research articles that I put as a reference in the folder for the materials. And it talks a lot about like, okay, so you're thinking about doing this. Here's some things to think about. Here's some troubleshooting. Here's some planning. So it's a really good like toolkit article that walks you through like, okay, what am I really getting myself into? Because it's easy to be like, oh, new thing, like shiny, cool, new way to try this thing. And I mean, I do think it's great, but I also it's not like the magic pill. It doesn't change everything, but I am pretty sold on the things it is changing are the kind of things I was specifically looking for. So I'll be sharing my screen through this presentation. This is thankfully Lauren was like, "Hey, that was a cool presentation you did at SER." So this was um, I revamped and added some extra materials out of what I did at our regional conference last March. So it is pretty much that, but I've added several new things. I'm also doing different things now. Some things have changed. So this is definitely like the most current what I'm doing. And what's really cool is I've, you know, been evangelizing our whole department about this. Everybody is doing this to some form, which is pretty exciting. I didn't expect them all to, you know, go all the way down like this, but I think it's also cool because I I can't imagine how difficult it might be to do this with minimal support. So I think that's another like big privilege I think I have in this is having people that say, "That's cool. Hey, can we try that too? How could we do that?" And like having, people you can troubleshoot it with. So I hope that, you feel like you could reach out to me. Maybe there's some other people on this call that you're like, or you see after tonight. Like, I'm happy to reach out and troubleshoot this kind of stuff. I didn't come up with any of this. Um, but I'm like full on fanboy. And the only thing I've done is I hadn't seen anyone doing this in music therapy before. So I think what we do is specifically well aligned with it. And I've done a big long preamble. So let's hop into it. Let me get my screen share ready here. And um, okay. So my pithy title is C's get degrees, but do they make great therapists? And that's because that's what I was realizing when I first was teaching was like they have to get a C, right? Like ANTA says so, NASM says so. They have to get a C. So if a C is the bar, I wasn't feeling good. So that's what this is about. Why did I get into this, right? Um, if a C is the bar, why do I feel so bad about the students that skate by my classes with a C? So that was really the first like hurdle that I had to jump over is I was realizing my classes were structured in a way that um and this was a real problem, right? Because an A meant those were the students that were actually meeting the criteria that I was trying to address from the AMTA and CBMT competencies, right? Like the professional competencies and the standards were structured in a way that Bloom's taxonomy wise, it was like the people that got an A were the ones that were actually getting the content. Meaning, if somebody skated by with a C, not only was I feeling like, frustrated that they skated by, that they didn't have all the information. I was also worried because they're going to get to the CBMT exam and, you know, I'm seeing more and more people struggling taking the exam. And it's like, yeah, well, if they're not like performing it how I have it currently set up, at the best level, of course they're going to be struggling with the exam. And a new exam will be out, I think, next year. So you know, we've got to be thinking about that. That was my kind of first thought. My second thought was, and yes, please write in the chat throughout. Um, Great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ours is specifically just following our university, big old university policies, and it's just following those NASM rules. I think a B minus is a fantastic way to do it. Um, so, um, yeah, so that was the first point, and then the second point was really like thinking differently about the purpose of our program, right? Being this professionally oriented minded thing, and it was okay. Well, I need to rethink this. I need to backwards design this differently. I need to think about how I can, incentivize actually getting the concepts, whether that was in classes that were, you know, therapy, concrete skills like practicum classes, whether that was, theory and foundational knowledge type classes, or whether it was music skill classes. I was seeing these issues across like the different types of classes I was leading. So the real problem is, this is again, I'm not trying to persuade you of this, but this is a very good article by Link and Gusky that basically just talks about the traditional grading system has not worked for a long time in there. I think it incentivizes the wrong things, and we can work smarter, and we don't have to work harder. So, a standards-based grading model is basically doing something. You might have heard of all kinds of different ways of using it, but it's the idea of um, grading by, and think of it for us like goals and objectives, right? Like, I want to make sure that they meet the goals for our class and I just set up the objectives to do those things. Versus what I hate about the traditional point system is I felt like sometimes I got students that got A's because they happen to follow the procedures of my class well enough rather than grasp the concept strongly. So in my mind, I was like, is that an A? And it's like, and is that their fault, or are they just good at college, right? And I set up this class so that I'm the one that is frustrated when they're not actually doing the thing that I feel like actually got an A, and it's not their fault. It's my fault. I set it up like that. um, so that was again what was going in my head. So why though? What does it mean? Well, this is what the research says about specs grading specifically, which we'll talk about in a second. What I mean by that, but um, specs grading is being used across disciplines from hard sciences and engineering type programs and mathematics, and I've even found a couple of music based papers on specification gradings. It's reducing academic anxiety. One thing that I really like is I was not dealing with grade disputes and grade grubbing anymore. Especially I was pretty new to what I'm doing. I'm still a relatively new professor full time. So for me, it was like, I can't spend all my time nickel and diming all of these assignments when I'm also simultaneously worried about, you know, scholarship and community service and, all these other things that we have to be doing all the time. I was like, no, like, you did this thing, and I don't want to have to like go to litigation with you to talk about why you didn't do this thing. I can just work on making it very clear. So, and in reality, I'm just telling them the whole point I'm doing this is because I want them to be well prepared to be music therapists. Like, that is really it. And I do that because I can build progress oriented relationships. I can not spend as much time grading, and I can worry more about having a one on one meeting with them and talking about um, things that aren't going well. Or, God forbid, we could spend more time with the students that we can just foster them, like we can grow their skills instead of always putting out fires and playing whack-a-mole, academic whack-a-mole constantly, right? um, Giving them choices. We'll talk more about that choice idea in the academic autonomy. um, Making the main thing, making it very clear what you want and expect. I found this is my main thing is I'm seeing more accurate grade distribution. I feel much better when the semester ends of, even if I still am an Enneagram 9 and hate conflict, when it's like, man, I just wish you didn't make me have to do this right now, but you did nothing for this class. And I'm so sorry that you have to fail this class, right? It's very clear though. It's not like, but I wanted this many points and I turned in this thing. It's like, it's not there, it's not done. um and I really like, this is another unintended, for me, an unintended consequence, but I didn't know about this when I started, but separating process, progress, and product oriented behaviors. So I can see how well they work through a class. I can look at each student's individual progress and see if they're making their own progress, and also product, are they doing the things that I need them to do? So having those three different lenses of looking at how they're achieving in a class is really good for writing writing like actually helpful recommendation letters. um, let's see, the students I teach know that saying I work so hard will not make me, yeah, exactly, right. um, yeah. So, what is specification grading? So, let's make the main thing the main thing. A backwards design approach, meaning you're thinking with the end in mind. And again, I'm assuming you all know these buzzwords, but I'm still going to lay them out anyways. So, backwards design, meaning you start with, um, we do this all the time, all our classes. We are addressing these AMTA competencies, right? In this class. Okay, cool. How am I going to do that and measure that? So I do that by uh, creating assignments and grading structures in bundles, a binary grading structure. It says satisfactory, unsatisfactory. I now use like a 4 point grading system, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's basically excellent, which is like gold star, above and beyond, That's my way to say, you rocked this assignment. You totally crushed it. What I'm looking for is an M. So there's E for excellent, M for meets expectation. Maybe it's not perfect, but I'm thinking like, I asked you to do this thing. You followed the directions. It's mostly right. This is good. That's good work. Good job. Keep doing this. Which again is what I'm shooting for. I love E's, but I really just want them. Cool, you did the thing. And then the cool opportunity is R's for like redo or revise and resubmit or whatever you want to think about it. But it's the idea of, I know you tried on this. I see evidence that you tried, but it's just you didn't get the main thing. So I'm going to give you some feedback. You're going to turn it in again. No penalty. There's nothing wrong. You just do it with my feedback, and you're going to get an in. Like you're just going to do it until you get it. And then there's F, which means fragmentary, which means you like I told you to turn in a reflection from your field work, and it says like I went to field work today. Okay, this is not good. Like this tells me nothing. I had 7 things you needed to say, and you addressed 0. So that is it comes into play later when we talk about like tokens, almost like a gamification of the education environment. But what I want you to think of is the imagery of the way you can make. So if I make a C the minimum for my class, a C is what I'm looking for. I can make a B or an A by doing 2 things. I can give them more hurdles, as in, let's say in a performance-based thing, they have to do 5 songs over the semester on guitar or piano or something like that and singing. Okay, well, to get a B, I could make it 7, or an A could be 8 or whatever. You just make it more of the same thing, or higher hurdles where maybe you're thinking like Bloom's taxonomy, like, okay, if I'm making you do this thing, know this knowledge, regurgitate this knowledge at a C level, maybe by the time you're getting to an A level, I want you to be able to synthesize multiple articles on that topic and come up with some new idea about that, like, or how does that change the way you think about something? So working on like more than just understanding information, but applying information. And I'll show you some examples of that in a little bit too. So what is this? What do I mean in real life? So this is an example from clinical applications of music therapy, which is one of our first song leading. So this is from my syllabus for this semester. This QR code is also that link that you have in the email. So you don't need to like do that right now. So I tell them, because we're working towards achieving therapeutic competencies, we're using a grading system outlined specifically that I'm hoping will reduce your anxiety, make my expectations clear, provide you choices and accountability for how you'd like to participate in this class. Right up there. I tell them right away, I put this language in the syllabus, not just so it's in the syllabus, but so that every time I talk to them about this, I have this helps me do not pass go, do not collect $200. I'm going to make sure that I pause and talk about this. They get sick of hearing about this, but in this first semester, I'm spending the whole first class, and then I'm reminding them all semester how it works. I tell them I've been doing this for several semesters, and this is me just like putting it here, but I talk to them as like, I know this is different than you've done in high school. I know that this is different than what you've done in college for most of your classes. I know this is different, and I know different probably makes you feel some kind of way. So I know that that's stressful. I know you might even hate this, but what I'm saying is I'm seeing more students do well. I'm seeing you have the opportunity to choose how you want to participate in this class. I'm seeing that I'm open to ideas. If you're like, hey, how could we change this A-level assignment because I want to do a project that helps me work on doing a proposal for the senior living facility that's in my hometown or something, like, I'm all about those kind of things, right? Like I'm all about we can make these adaptations and things like that, because if a C level's the main thing, that means I'm kind of more open to seeing how the B and the A levels supplement those things. So um, I get feedback, I solicit feedback intentionally throughout the class. And um, basically, I tell them first off, I hate busy work myself. I can't stand busy work. So I want to focus assignments as much as possible to mastering class concept. Um, there's a minimum expectation for getting a C, and this is what I just said. I recognize this may be super different from what you're used to, but I'm more worried about the professional behaviors. Did you turn it in on time? Did you follow the instructions? Did you meet the standard? Did you demonstrate what I am looking for the acquisition of the primary concepts? And are you showing growth? Is this work in line with what you have been showing me therapeutically, musically, your academic growth, your writing? It's not like, whoa, where did this come from? Right? Like your writing is suddenly way better. Where did this, hello, Chat GPT, where did this come from? Right? Um, so this is where I tell them again, an E and an M are what I'm looking for. An R is redo, no penalty. F requires a token. So then here's a good example in a class. So here is what usually breaks people's brains the first time. It's the bundles. So this is the big difference between, to me, a traditional class, traditional point system, and these classes. In these classes, I've got certain things you have to do to get a C, and these things don't even matter. You could just choose not to do these things, and that's what you have to temper your own expectations and really respect the fact of, like, whether it's because they chose to do that because they're like, hey, I'm working a lot this semester and I don't have a lot of time to put into this 1 credit hour class or whatever. Okay, this is what I need. This is my main thing. I need you to do this. So in that class, that means they're doing group song leading during my open gym. So I need them to be in their group. One time they're going to play guitar, one time they're going to play percussion, one piano, one on voice. And they have to be satisfactory. And I could talk more specifically about those rubrics, but the point is, they can get a redo and I like to do this like a master class anyway. So they play them in class. Sometimes they finish the song. Sometimes I pause it in the middle and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where did you get that groove from? Hold on, let's pause. Let's work on that together. Okay, try it again. So that we can do it in a big, everybody hears everybody's feedback kind of way. They submit their performance reviews, which are just, they take videos of themselves. They cringily watch videos of themselves and they say, oh man, I never looked up once, or oh man, I missed the chord changes every single time, or whatever. So they have to do those, which are four critiques or compliments, and then one like action item. What can they do about that? And meeting the attendance requirement. Most of my classes are very process oriented, so it's like, you just please show up. You got to show up. And then for a B, I've been implementing just having them do a lot of online Blackboard style quizzes to mimic that multiple choice CBMT style exam of, like, if we start doing this right away, I want you to just not be anxious of sitting on a computer and taking a multiple choice test. I even ratio time it so that it is the same time per question as like taking the CBMT exam. So they get 3 attempts. I don't tell them this, but if they need more attempts, I'll give them more attempts. I just put 3 to have an arbitrary number so that they, try really hard. But if they tell me, oh my gosh, I got an 89, I'm like, just take it again. Just do it again. I don't care. Just do it. In addition, so to get a C, they got to do those things. To get a B, they've got to do the C things plus the B things. To get an A, they got to do the C things plus the B things plus the A thing. In this class, that means performing 2 songs by themselves from our barrier upper division test, which are, come on, play You Are My Sunshine, play something on the guitar. It doesn't even have to be great. I'm just looking that you're ripping off the Band-Aid and doing this in front of your class. And then a rep binder with 20 songs. We freaking do, 20 songs in our class. So this is, to me, these are very achievable. And also I try to make them intertwine with one another so they're not totally random things, but sometimes they can feel like side quests. Like, I'm going to do this thing, and then I'm going to do this thing. So you can see how in this class, this is um, a little bit of more and higher hurdles because they don't have to do more showcases, but they're different. So they're doing different higher things. So this theory quiz is a little bit extra harder. And these two are definitely harder because these are by themselves. So that's an example of using the bundle system. I also specifically outlined these things. Obviously, if you get below a C, if you get a C minus or lower, you're retaking this class. But this is what that looks like. This is what to get a D is if you miss one of those showcases and you are on those performance reviews, and an F is anything less than those. Now, in my school uses pluses and minuses, so I use it like this. I use pluses like a gold star. So let's say they only did their B bundle, but they did a great job. Cool, B plus. I never use the minuses punitively except for like I never do it like you did the B bundle, but you scraped by. To me, it's like you did the B bundle, you did the B bundle, right? But I factor the pluses and minuses into my attendance system. So if you miss, they get one freebie because it's a once a week class. They get one freebie for whatever. I don't care. Don't ask. I don't need to know. But they can tell me, oh, my friend's wedding is, I'm going. It's cool, great. But if they miss two, it starts calculating like an A goes from an A minus, and then if they miss three, it's an A goes to a B plus. So they just start losing based on those. Uh, this is a common question and a thing to deal with. What if they do the A bundle but they don't get the B bundle? Well, right here, I basically say I reserve the right to handle this case by case. But on textbook, the textbook response is you get the C bundle because you didn't do the B bundle. So you get it drops back down. Now, let's say they almost finished the B bundle and you're like, all right, I'm going to split the difference. You get the B bundle. But I'm not arguing with them about this. I'm just saying you did a good job. You didn't get you're not getting an A because you didn't do everything in the class. You get a B. So I've done that. If I felt good about the amount of process oriented and progress oriented things they've been doing in the class. The other thing is like they're like, I didn't finish doing all my electric guitar checks for my other level class. I'm like, okay, we'll do them. Get them to me by Tuesday. Like, I'll just again, the good thing is if I set these fences, these boundaries, you all know how this works. If I set the boundaries like this now, it's very easy for me to give academic grace after the fact, right? Like, but I try and make it super clear so that they're not surprised. And again, I'm more worried about do they get it? We are in the same boat. It's like, well, I can't do this past when it's due. Like, we've got to turn in grades, right? Like, we can't do this forever, right? But if it's like, I'm here, I'm waiting for other grades for other classes to come in, just turn in the damn things, right? Like, just do it, okay? So the last thing is the token structure. And so I don't have like bonus points in my classes. I don't honor late work, but I have this token system. So in my 1 credit hour classes, they get one token, and they can use a token if they get an F on an assignment. They can use it to redo it. They can get a token to turn in something late one time, or if they haven't used it for any of these other things, they can use it to redeem a tardy. So that means or tardy or an absent. So that means if let's say they did everything, but they missed 3 classes, and they might have gone from an A to a B plus. Now they're just going to go to an A minus, right? And I used to have like a form. I've changed that. Now they just submit it on their like Blackboard journals. So I used to and I'll offer instead of bonus points, I'll offer opportunities to earn bonus tokens in my classes. So I'll say, we have a guest presenter coming in the other class. If you want to come, you can get bonus points. If you want to volunteer with the clinic and go table at this event and play with, kids at this, you know, heart walkathon thing, like cool, great. You want to go to SER and write up how you went to this topic related to song leading, cool. So I'll come up with those kind of things. I try to offer options that are accessible or free for, students that can't go to a conference, right? And then I'll try and offer something that's like, but if you can go to conference, that would be a cool one too. So I try to uh, be mindful of college students and their accessibility and things like that. So I had students complaining that they didn't get it over and over. So I was just made this little visual guide. I got Chat GPT and Dolly to make me a cool little character. I said, all right, pretend it's a video game. Getting a C is like you beat the game. And that's what I have to remind them over is a C is you beat this class. You did a good job. It probably doesn't feel good to get a C in any other class in college. But I'm telling you, if you get a C, I will give you a high five and say, hell yeah, you got a C. That's awesome. I'm so proud of you, right? Like your parents might not be proud of you, your fraternity might not like your GPA that semester or something, but you did what I needed you to do in this class. um, a B is like beating the game on like normal mode or hard mode or something. It's like doing a little bit extra, right? And an A is like you completed all the side quests of your video game, and tokens are like extra lives. So I just use this to just give them that. And here's how I show them that calculation. So they miss one class, it doesn't change. Two classes, it changes one letter grade, and you all can see this. And remember, game over. Be mindful of C minus or lower. You don't technically pass this class. You're going to see me again. So just letting them know how it works. I find that repeating these things and making it as multimodal as I can really helps. And so what are the pros and cons? Well, and these are pulled from myself and also the other people in my department, but we've seen students showing more autonomy. They choose exactly how they want to participate in these classes. We're not arguing about what they haven't done or how well it's been, because now it's like I am very easy now to say, okay, we still have to make judgment calls. They still are dealing with our interpretation of they've done the thing right. Like it doesn't necessarily change that dynamic, but now I'm seeing that more of my students are getting good grades, and I'm happy with their proportion of grades they're getting. When someone gets a C, like I said, I don't feel good about that. When someone gets an F, I don't feel good, but I go, man, we had the contract. I put in 4 of those academic alerts. Like we talked about this multiple times. So I think it also just helps from, aside from the fact that you could get institutional pushback because it's different. I understand that. On the other hand, there's so much work on your end of making things clear that I also feel like an institution is really like, it's laid out, right? Like it was very clear what you had to do. I think it makes it very easy. Again, as somebody who, again, I have had to learn over my whole professional life about working on confrontation, is it's helped me be much clearer, um, much firmer with giving feedback that might be tough, but I can also be more clear about, wait a minute, you did this assignment well, but how you did it, and you're, turning it in on time. And, so I've separated those behaviors in a way that's very easy for me to say exactly what I can give feedback, which sometimes is great. I can give great feedback all across the board. Um, um, I think I'm able to, for me, this worked because the professional skills behavior, it opens up I said it's more equitable, and I think you could argue about equity from this approach, and I'm happy to talk about that from a big, like, meta perspective. But I think there is equity in the sense of, at the end of the day, professors are always in this position where we're making judgment calls. Now I'm able to make it a lot more clear about how those judgment calls, if they have to be made, are made. So, and I'm put this because a lot of my classes, to my own fault, were set up so that the process oriented behaviors got factored so much into a grade of an assignment that was like turning it in got them so many points, when it was like they turned in something that was fairly incoherent and they're passing this class because of how I had it structured, right? So again, you could fix those things without getting on to specs grading. I'm not saying that you have to buy into this totally. Um, I think it's cool that you're able to tailor things to the class. It's easy to make token assignments as those like test kitchen type assignments of like, I'm going to throw in this extra thing that they could do. Um, and if I really like it, maybe next time around that becomes one of my like actual assignments. um, I found grade distribution has improved. I'm not overvaluing mediocre work. I'm able, if it's not really hitting it, I could say, hey, you did the assignment. I'm not saying like this is not, you didn't try. And so I really like it as a good place to level with the student. I'm just saying we were talking about this and it's not there. So can we redo that thing? Um, a better time management, less time evaluating low quality work. I'm able to say, this didn't hit it. I can tell you why it didn't hit it. And we could talk more about that. But some of the cons, I think this is a big shift for some students, and this causes a lot of anxiety. I'm sure all of you all are aware the whole Gen Z and COVID cohort is very anxious. There's a lot of research about academic anxiety and all of these things. And I think there's a lot of comfort in the knowing how a traditional point system works. So I'm very aware and talk about that of like some of them, I ask them every semester. I do these feedback forms in the middle of the semester. And some of them, it's anonymous. And I'm still like, I'm pretty sure I know who you are because you tell me every time that this is the dumbest thing ever and you should drop all the bundles. And that's okay. Uh, I also really like the confrontation are that the students are met with the like the did you get it or did you not thing because sorry, I'm watching my cat decide if he's going to push my daughter's Legos off the shelf and I'm like, come on, man. Um, so I like that it sets up some natural friction of confrontation in a way that like right we're working with people who we potentially on what setting we're in we're working with clients and possibly having to confront all kinds of things um, and we need to work on doing that and modeling that in a gentle way and I just think it creates a lot of opportunities of like we can keep going we can keep trying I'm on your team like I want you to do this um, So I asked, and I think my colleague said that calculating grades takes touch longer, is what Brett said. I disagree. I think for me, it's a lot faster. But I do agree that the startup cost is high. This is a lot of course redesigning. The pre planning takes me a lot of time. Um, Lorna talked about like, man, I've been doing this one class the same way for 8 years. It was just exhausting to even think about doing it differently, right? So I get it. Um, so she said ultimately you have to decide if it's worth the lift. Um, you need the time and space. This is the hardest part that I've realized is you've also got to carve out the space to like put up or shut up. Like you said, you were going to give feedback do you have the time and space to give the feedback? Because you can't tell somebody to redo everything like, oh, it's 2 weeks before the semester is over. All these assignments need to be redone. Like that's not fair either. Um, either it's just not fair at all. I think the unintentional surprise is I'm able to speak a lot more clearly to how students are, achieving. I'm able to tell a practicum site like, hey, here's a student. This is how they did last semester. I think they're going to match really well with you. Or, hey, I think they're a really good fit for your internship because I'm seeing these kind of things and I know you all. And, so I'm able to just speak very transparently and I'm able to see and help and talk to students of like again you can apply wherever you want I'm just telling you some of the things you struggle with are going to be hard at this site right um, and the other thing that's been really helpful and unintended kind of positive consequence is using this in the supervision like not from an academic perspective but in the clinical skills supervision is really great from that idea of splitting that product, process, and progress oriented behavior, because it's helpful for, I think, both ends of the spectrum of like the students doing really well. Okay. Sometimes the supervisor, I don't know what to tell them. They're doing fine. They've been leading the whole session since week 3. Okay. Well, like there's something there. Like they're a student, you're a professional, like something's there. But the other end too is, let's say it's like pulling teeth. It's like, come on, there's something there that they're doing, right? Like we can find them doing something that you're like, well, they are showing up on time. Like you could start from wherever it is. And again, maybe both of these examples, are not talking about the total train wreck case that we're hoping not to have, right? But I think working, that would be another whole presentation, but fleshing these ideas out really for supervisors. I do think it aligns well. I think you could build a whole internship around these ideas. But that is a little beyond the scope. Some other tips and tricks. I've found that feminist-based approach, and I mean it from the standpoint of like I use it from that community music therapy approach of, I want it to be a place that I don't need to be the expert in the classroom. Like I'm just a music therapist that has happened to have been doing it longer than you have been doing it, but you come here with a lot of life experience yourself, and I'm just doing things that hoping will be more helpful for you. That being said, I'm still kind of experimenting constantly with this stuff. I want to see how you are perceiving it. I want to see how the whole class is perceiving it and compare it to how the last class perceived it. And I've changed a lot of things about my classes based on these anonymous feedback forms. So I literally use Microsoft Forms, which is like a Google form. I throw it up around midterm of the semester. We do it as like a bell ringer exercise. And then the next week I say, hey, here's what everybody said. And I make a couple of slides and talk about that and say, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I think we can change right now. Here's what I might be able to change for next semester and the next time. And here's what I'm not going to change and why. Because maybe it's like, I understand you hate X, but I think that's really important for this class, right? Like, you know, I know some things are hard about school. This is a good one that's hard, right? I think that repetition and again, reassurance is really great. um, Being multimodal. I've said a lot of these things already, which is great. The other thing too is you could soft launch these things as you're preparing. Like you could try it with one class. You could try one aspect of this. I will say I would be scared. I would caution the kind of like half in, half out. I think you would maybe get the worst of both. Possibly would be my caution if you kind of dabbled with it. So for me, a soft launch might be choosing a class and redesigning a class around that. Have patience for the students, have patience for your capacity. And just remember, I think really is you have to be responsive, and you have to define what's important to you. What's your attendance policy look like? What is acceptable? What is an E and an M level work? Um, and I like how you can create meaningful alternatives. So a good example of a meaningful alternative I've done is I've changed my like song leading class to where I front load the semester. We do all our lectures the first 6 weeks, and then the 6 or 7 weeks, and I kind of try and blitz through them with them. We're playing songs and talking about songs and styles. And then the rest of the semester is open gym. They show up, we play songs, and I tell them, hey, guess what? You've got 4 songs to do with your group. When y'all get 4 passing songs, you don't got to come anymore because you've done what I needed you to do for the class. The other things that they can do is those individual songs and their quiz. They can do those on office hours. They can do those whenever they want. But I found a way, and students really love that, right? They get an hour back in their life. Um, I can, the only negative, and I tell them that is I do think you get a lot by being in this class and hearing other people's feedback from that master class standpoint. But I'm willing to meet you in the middle because I hope that's super motivating for you. Because if that's super motivating for you, I'm glad. So, um, and then luckily, like I said, I've been privileged. I haven't had to worry about this very much. But we live in a world where you might have to think about defending why you're doing this. The book, Specifications Grading by Linda Nilsson, that outlines everything. It's like the Bible of this, has a lot of talking about that. So, and then preparing and collaborating with supervisors for if things have always been done a certain way for a long time, other professors, other supervisors, students, everybody might this might be a gigantic adjustment for some people, right? A big paradigm shift. So just knowing that you're doing things differently and you might not get buy-in from everybody. So I want to show a couple of quick things and then answer questions. So these are some of the discussion questions. I would just want to like sit in your mind. What would it look for you? What are your worries or hesitations? How could you separate this stuff? But the other thing I want to show here real fast, okay, these that I put stars by, these two are in the folder that you could look at, and this one is another good one about the rubric, and then the other ones are just some good references. This is that folder with all the stuff in it. So what does it look like on my grade book here? On my grade book, it's pass and fail. I've had to work around Blackboard, right? Blackboard doesn't like this either. So Canvas, Blackboard, whatever you have to use, right? I'm using a lot of hidden columns. So I can write here, what was their grade in this class? Okay, what was their grade after I calculated their absences? So the student is seeing that, right? I keep a tab of their absences because the absence roster thing automatically like keeps track of a grade, but that's not useful to me because I'm not using it like that, right? I changed these to just like complete, incomplete. For things I just need to know, did they hit 10 of them? Some of them did way more than 10. Cool. But that way I'm just doing like simple counting. So this is the kind of stuff that I even had to like ask our teaching and learning center, like how to do some of these things. And here's an example of like the rubric, right? So I'm telling them, here's how you're doing this thing. And instead of using assignments on our Blackboard, I use the journal option. It's like a blog or a discussion post, but it's private, right? It's like their own little diary. So the cool thing is they post their chord chart and then their video, and they tell me the genre and the instrument and that they did Autumn Leaves. There's their chord chart. And I could say, nice, I love your voicings. I love the swing feel. And so I'm telling them things in class, but I'm also typing these things so that they have it later and say, so basically I'm just regurgitating what I just said, but basically like, I think you could take this down a little bit. I'd rather hear it like in a dusty, like rich register instead of kind of like in your head voice. So maybe B flat or A. Um, and in and then I was able to say, "You're the winner. You're the first person to finish your show classes. Don't come to class anymore." So I was able, but I like this because it's a private little conversation between me and the student. Um, that's supplementing the in-person stuff we're doing. Here's the rubric like laid out in a visual for you all. This is that EMRF rubric, and that is it. So I'm happy to go over any of that. But I kind of wanted to save the last little bit to just talk with you all. And assuming some of y'all have probably tried things like this, or you're like, okay, I'm skeptical. How about this? So I'm always kind of like tinkering with this stuff in my head. So what do y'all, any thoughts, questions? What do y'all think? If you don't have any, that's fine too. But I at least wanted to pause.
I can
I'm wondering, go ahead, Lauren, but I'm also wondering after you go has anybody, I know Lauren has, but has anybody been playing around with any standards-based gradings approaches? So like thinking from that angle. Lauren, what was your idea though?
I was just gonna share something that so I implemented a lot of this last fall, and my biggest challenge that I found was the students kind of like keeping track of their own when they were gonna, like, do a redo. Like, I had to do a lot of reminding them of, like, "Oh, you have to redo this assignment, you didn't meet the standards," and so I felt like it was challenging for me in that aspect of I felt like there was a little more kind of that, like, micromanaging up front of, like, "Well, remember,
Sure.
you have to redo it," but I'm hopeful that this semester I have a couple different things I'm gonna do to hopefully make that more clear to them, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was just kind of something that I found was as they kind of got used to the new system, something that I kinda had to help within that transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have any ideas or thoughts or things that you all do? I definitely think that's part of it. One of the things I like to do, so the problem is if I'm grading like that, let's say I'm sitting down and I'm grading in Blackboard like that, it does show them next time they log into Blackboard, like Chris commented, but that's if they're paying attention to that, right? And personally, like I get Blackboard notifications that I don't necessarily see too. So I've also gotten into the habit of just like using either Blackboard or an email quickly of like, hey, just want to let you know I graded several of your reflections. I noticed one of them was just missing a bunch of detail. Reflection number 8, I need you to go back and do. So it's like, not only is it in there, but I've sent them an email. And so by then, the next class period, it's on my mind too, because I've said it twice already. It's a little bit more on my mind. So hopefully it doesn't slip my mind when I see them in class or even in the hallway. Like, hey, oh, I wrote something for you. Like, if I don't say it, I'll forget it. That's just me. So it's like, I'll sometimes I'm awkward like that. Like, hey, I wrote you a thing on Blackboard. Like, I'm not trying to like tell them their whole life, but I'll just like, I know that's annoying. I know I'm telling you something out of context right now, but I'm just trying to like tell you like 5 times that this happened. So I do think that that's like a nitpicky thing that I agree with. But to me, again, that's to me a trade of a pro and a con that I really like. I really like that approach of like, look, I want you to be able to redo things till you get it. Because what lesson are we teaching, right? About what we do, right? If our clients, we say, no good, right? Like that would be a weird lesson. We would never say that to a client, like, right? So, and not that there are clients, but if we're teaching them how to work with someone on something like that, like, yeah, I'm trying to foster like those behaviors as well. Yeah, good. Oh, Jess said that too. I think that's part of it is please don't remind me. I know I'm keeping track of things. And there's a bit of that too. So, one thing I've noticed, so one pitfall I've had is this approach, I made a lot of things like it wasn't due. All of the things had to be due by the end of the semester. Um, I I get on my end why I was like, that's generous. You've got all semester to do it. But they're college students, and some of them are 19 years old, and that means they're trying to get it all done and after Thanksgiving. So it's helped. The two ways I've combated that are the two things of I've trying to find more and more ways that it's like, how can I do the opposite of more hurdles, like the class thing? Like, okay, is there a way I can let them off the hook of the last couple of weeks of classes? And again, that doesn't work for all your classes because some of your classes you need them there for all of them. So it's like, okay, how could I do that with assignments? So maybe it's like they get to drop one assignment that they don't have to do. Again, that's also hard because depending on how you're making it, you're like, but I think they're all important assignments, right? Like, so there's always things to weigh, but I like that at least it's like you kind of have to come to the table with your own concession of like, okay, if I was going to throw a bone here, how could I do it in a way that works for this class, that also gives them a little bit more incentive to be on the ball? Because again, a student that has done all their work before the last 3 weeks of class, that is humongous, right? Like that is a feat. They deserve something for doing that, right? Like that's a big deal. And again, maybe 2 of them will do it. Like not everybody's doing that. Most of them are doing the regular timeline and still doing a great job. So, and they're always going to procrastinate. Like that's okay too. It's not the end of the world. It's just this could feel better. This doesn't have to be like you don't have to live like this, man. Um, other questions or thoughts?
I was just going to say that our engineering program at our college at Elizabethtown, they do mastery-based learning with some of the different skills and competencies that they have. And it was sort of one professor that started it. And then similarly to you, the others, the whole department has now kind of adopted what they call mastery-based. And I went to a couple different presentations um, of theirs, and I just knew there was some way that this could work in our classes. But I kept getting stuck at where to begin and how to start. So I just really wanted to say kind of thank you because I think seeing that it does work, you know, successfully within music therapy, and also I can start small. I could do this in one class. I'm sort of redesigning a class anyway, so as you redesign, why not start there?
Right.
They've had a whole lot of success in a really different field, but also it's a field that has basic skills and competencies that are super important when you're an engineer also.
Right.
That's what he was kind of saying. Like, you don't want somebody building your bridge that got an A in the class, but doesn't really have the skill, or someone that just squeaked by with a C, you know? So I
Right.
think we're
Totally.
similar, you know? So those were just my thoughts. And I just want to say thanks.
Yeah. No, I think that's yeah, on the money. Yeah, I agree with you. And I definitely think I dove into the deep end of the pool the first time that I did this, but I still didn't do everything. I did all of it, and I wasn't even done with the book yet. I would definitely recommend plowing through the book, and that would be like a first good step is maybe if you don't have a ton of time, maybe start with that one article that I think it's Striefer is her last name. Yeah, Striefer. Um, start with her article if you're a little bit like, I want to get the gist, but I don't want to read a whole book right now. If you have a little bit more time, the book is not terribly hard. Could sit down and read a chapter or so at a go. So it took me a couple of weeks at like a casual, I can sit down for 30 minutes and read a chapter kind of pace. So the book is not like a terribly dense, difficult read either, but it does have you like, you're constantly like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, I could do. So you start getting in like brainstorming mode when you read it. So I would recommend those as like dipping your toes in the pool, like way to think about this too. And then, yeah, and I would say the hardest part is that thinking through what does this change about my assignments and like how I'm assessing in this class? Does it change the nature of my assignments? Or do I just need to change the way that the assignments are in these bundles? Because some of the classes and the good thing with me is I was new in this role and I definitely was on like a little bit of a crusade of like, I felt like the old ways that the classes were working, which, by the way, is the same place I went to undergrad. So I had lots of opinions um, about like didn't I didn't love some of the aspects myself. So I was very vested in like, oh, I was already going to change things anyways. So like you're saying, of if you're already in that spot and you know you're going to shake things up, it's not the biggest lift. It's when you're like, hold on, I don't do I dislike what I'm doing? Do I really need to change what I'm doing? And again, I don't think you have to. I did want to come back to what Christina said, like back at the beginning, people not turning in assignments. Yeah, I think that was one of the like, to me, how I've handled, and I've still had people do it. I'm I'm definitely a closer on the pushover side when it comes to that kind of thing because again, my mind is I'm very like, I'm sitting down, I'm looking at all these grades and I'm realizing, what the hell? Well, let's just pick a name. Jimmy hasn't turned in any of these fieldwork reflections. I know he's been going to the field work. Why are these not there? So I'm literally sending, sometimes I'll do it like, everybody, those better be in. I'm about to say, that's it. And again, I feel like I'm being had a little bit for that. Like I could have just been harsher about that. But on the other hand, it's like, come on, I know you went there. What the hell is happening here? Turn it in. Like, do it, because I believe I didn't make this assignment as busy work. Therefore, I want you to do it. Therefore, get it in. And if you're not, okay, that's a different choice. Which is, I find, is the hardest with those written assignments, because that's something that they have to do on their own time, right? So whereas like a performance-based assignment or something in class, or things like that, that's very clear. Like they do it for me, or they have to schedule time to do things or whatever. Which, to be fair, I like doing those type of assignments as much as possible anyways, because it kills two birds with one stone, or multiple, because I like that I see them doing skills. To me, I'm like, I don't need to know that you vaguely have a written concept about being a music therapist. I need to know that you can sing in front of somebody without like falling apart, right? And I need to see that you have a validating response to a thing. Like we need to talk through like dynamics and things like that, like the practice based things, right? Like again, it's just like what you were saying, Emily, I don't care if you technically know how to build a bridge. When you're faced with building a bridge, can you build the bridge? And that to me really aligns with the community music therapy aspect. And I talk a lot about that. Of when I was in school, we talked about like, you're not performance, right? And some of you all know that, like music therapy, we're not performers. Something about that never sat totally right with me, because it's like when the CEO of the hospital walks by, it sure feels like I'm performing, right? Like when they're like HIPAA violation and they open the door and they're like, we have music therapy here. Definitely performing at that moment, right? Like what I'm doing matters right then, even with all the ethical red flags, right? So I learning about community music therapy, and that idea of it being performative and us performing identities and performing healthy life choices and things like that. To me, that aspect of reframing what it is we're doing. Yeah, we're not singing an aria, but we're performing a healthy identity. We're performing these roles right now. So that's also helped me shift how I talk about that with students as well. Total side quest. Happy to talk about community music therapy till I'm blue in the face, but related, unrelated. I don't know how long y'all want to go, if y'all want to cut it off, but I'm happy to cut it off whenever, or finish up any questions that people have or things like that.
Yeah, I think originally we had kind of said available until 8:30-ish, but
Okay, perfect.
if
I'm fine. I just didn't know. I was like, we've passed an hour, and I just wanted to make sure. Till
yeah.
question mark. This party goes till question mark. So I do want to. I can ask some good follow up questions then, and just to like bounce it back, I'm going to share that. And I have more visual examples, and I also think maybe I should show you my feedback form would be helpful. But I'm also I'm also interested in this question a lot. And what are your worries, hesitations about this idea? And I think whether or not you do this specs grading, I do think that this to me is like the meat and potatoes of like just really good pedagogical practice of like, again, I'm sure many of you all are more seasoned than me. But to me, when I was learning about the idea of product, process, and progress oriented feedback, was like, oh, it's like something I intuitively knew, but had never been articulated to me in a way that I was like, yes, we could do that. So you all please feel free to chime in with anything, but I'm going to pull up that Microsoft form while we're talking here. Let's see, I'll screen share here while I'm doing that too. Okay. I think, because to me, the hidden superpower to me has definitely been the Microsoft form. And I got this from one of those like developmental teaching programs here at the University of Louisville. Okay, I have my forms. All right, I use Microsoft Forms chronically, as you could tell. Okay, so mid-semester feedback. Okay, so let's pick a class. Here is one just from last semester. So here's one of my performance-based classes. Okay, so I asked them these questions. And again, we do this as a bell ringer. What suggestions do you have for improving the class? So I'm asking them things like the format, the class, what Zoom's got too many things up in my radar here. Got it. The setting, the materials, yada yada. This content is making me feel more prepared. No, irrelevant, unsure. I don't know if it'll relate. So. I'm shooting for at least so is what I want in that, right? I know that I told them that I was like, I know that sometimes learning more things makes you realize that you're not as good as you thought you were. So I at least want you to feel like maybe I'm better, maybe I'm not better, or definitely confident. So then for each class, I just say rate how impactful each assignment, things, lectures we did. I just try and list all the things that we do in the class and say how great was that? Did that help you a lot? So I have them bring a song, any song that they want that says something about themselves. So that's the rapport song. We bring a folk song and play You've Got a Friend together. How important was that lecture about folk music and playing that song together? Same thing for country, same thing for blues, same thing for R&B and jazz influence, same thing for rock. How about the video reflections? How about the showcases? How about that? Then I asked them regarding specs grading, how much does this contributes to making me feel like I'm mastering the subject? Is somewhat motivating, is neutral or makes no difference, it somewhat detracts, or it's not motivating. So I asked them the bundles, choosing what grade I'm aiming for, the token system, the attain, not attain, like redo. When you think of this class, what's the main thing you'll remember? If you were to delete any part of the class, what would you take out and why? And then do you have any reflections on improving any of the parts of the class? I love this. I get a lot of fun responses. I like to read them individually. I like to look at the aggregate data, 4 and 4 here. And then I have some old ones that I'll pull up just to show you. Mid-semester. Okay, when was this from? A while ago, I think. It's loading. Okay, so this was 2023. So this is 2 springs ago. I showed them this slide and we talk about it. What's helping my learning? People say in practicum 4, a safe learning environment. What's hindering? Sometimes people talking about their practicums feels like it's going on a tangent. Being in the basement, people peeking in our classroom. So like things like that, like maybe I could control some of these things that are right. The topics that were voted for. So my senior seminar, I let them vote on what we talk about in that class. So they choose, and they always just want to talk about the MTBC exam, but they want some other things too. What could change? Maybe more grades regularly. Okay, cool. I'm getting some feedback on I'm not being as fast as they want. Checking in about practicum. And then what's good about this is I can show them sometimes of, hey, I just want to show you that about half of you said this thing, and I said about half of you said this thing, and they're in direct contradiction with one another. And it's one of those like, I just want to show you I'm working with these things and trying to decide the best way to move forward and with my goals of what this class should be about and things like that. So I like this. I just throw these slides up there. And, you know, sometimes I don't even throw the slides up there. And look at that. You can see mostly they're finding things pretty impactful. There's a couple of people that find things detracted from the class, but I'm getting, you know, that most of them are feeling very, or things are impactful or very impactful. I'm pretty happy with these things, right? Like this is pretty good feedback. The bundles, these were my freshmen. They were stressed about the bundles. It's interesting looking at the different classes and the different cohorts and seeing what they're saying. What do you remember? You know, stress. You know, but I find this super helpful for me. No one fills out those university things. So I'm actually getting the feedback that's actually helpful to me. And a triple benefit is I put in my pre-tenure review all these files and I go, oh wow, he's soliciting feedback from the students. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to do a good job. That also happens to look good as well, especially if you're trying to give a crap. So I think again, it never hurts, even if you're like me and some of your feedback, you're like, all right, you got to read it by yourself because you're like, I'm rolling my eyes right now. I'm annoyed at that right now, right? But that's why I can get it on my own time. I can reflect on that and then I can pull my thoughts together and bring it in so that when I talk to them about them, I can have a good attitude and separate what they're frustrated by without getting my feelings hurt about things like that too. You know, well, I set this thing up. I worked hard at this thing. It's like, well, if I come in with that attitude, that defeats the whole purpose of trying to get their feedback and moving and constructively. So I've got to work with my own emotions and expectations about that kind of stuff too. And again, if I can be chill about that and maybe do something different. You know, we're working with our cohorts, right? These are our students that want to be music therapists, right? This is different than the theory professor, right? Like these are our students. If I can find ways to really like at least try and hear them, I've heard students say that getting the feedback and the time to talk about these things and the space to talk about these things in class and spending sometimes a whole class period on this stuff is like some of the most meaningful things as students, just to feel like, oh, we had a professor that actually listened to what we had to say, right? That's depressing, but you know, it's also like the world we live in. The amount of work involved. I'm happy to show you what my brain looks like a little bit here. This is a peek behind the curtain for sure. I'm going to open up notes, share. All right, you see my notes here. Okay, so what I like to do, I keep everything in Apple Notes. So here's a good example, post-semester to-do list. So I just start this and just keep like a running tab of like, ooh, I had this bright idea, maybe for next semester. So I'm writing like, okay, what are the classes I need to get ready for? Okay, cool. Okay, post fall. Look, Kathy, we're on the same page. So this is what I took from them. And I said, okay, cool. They wanted timelines and they want me to put more soft deadlines in the syllabus. That's what Jess was talking like. How can we find those peer progress things? How can we create those deadlines that help with the process oriented behavior? How do I maybe create some flipped videos that I can make that they can practice to and things like that? My idea, if I finish this by midterm. So this is like just putting together. And then, so I just redesigned. Here's one that we redesigned with the TA. So I've been slowly redesigning all these ClinApps classes as song leading classes. And I changed ClinApps 4 to be all like music therapy tech. And I took all the music therapy tech stuff that I was doing in other classes and mostly took it out of there. So We loved that, but then we're like, okay, how are we going to focus number 4? And our TAs were doing that before, the guitar TAs. Luckily, also happened to be music therapists, the last 2 TAs. The wildest possible coincidence that 2 music therapists decided to come do their masters in classical guitar. So I knew that wasn't going to happen forever. So I was like, we got to prep this class so that a straight up guitar student can help with this, for multiple reasons. I could teach it myself. I could say, I want to teach this class, but they're a TA. And I think that's a meaningful part of being a TA, is learning how to be an effective teacher, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, how can we set up Henry's roles? And then, okay, like, this is what we were thinking about before for ClinApps 4, but then this is what we just did. I said, okay, cool. What can we do for the C bundle? Well, this class is going to be guitar intensive. So, okay, we just did a bunch of genres, but what if we make it like genres plus for this class, like a little bit more? Like, okay, well, now we're playing rock and alternative, like a punk and a metal song instead of just like a rock song. Or like, how do we play like something that's like funk or groove based? Or how about an intricate folk song? So not just like Blowing in the Wind, but how do they play You've Got a Friend, like a more like finger picking, more difficult song? What if they had to play a finger style arrangement, so that they played, um, you know, My Old Kentucky Home, and they played the melody like with it, or Here Comes the Sun, and you can hear the melody throughout? And what about if they have to pick a song of their choosing that exemplifies like guitar in some basically world music, like, um, and then we thought about other ideas. What if we are like, let's have a class and we talk about changing your string and taking care of your guitar, and how do you find a key of a song that your client is singing with and you don't know what key they're singing in? How could you figure that out? How could you utilize drop D tuning? So these were some ideas, and this is what we ended up settling on. So this was like my brainstorm, and we went to, okay, another problem. I used to say you could pick whatever songs you wanted in these genres. And for Henry, I was like, that's not super fair, because Henry would benefit as the TA from a list of songs. So what if I give them 10 songs and they pick one of those songs? What if I give them 10 of that, 10 of, so the C bundle is 3 songs. The B bundle is like world music. The a 1 etude, a finger style arrangement. So it could be like a classical guitar Carcassi etude, or it could be the Beatles, or it could be whatever, And then the A bundle is, I made an electric guitar or bass guitar bundle. So they have to play these electric guitar, learn the very basics of those. Here's our schedule that we started roughing out together, and you could see by January, the end of January, we're starting that open gym where they're just playing. I made the electric guitar bundle due in a little after spring break. The B bundle, if they finish 4 of them by that date, they don't have to do the last one. So that was like how we chose that. I sent, here's what I need to do. I need to send him the templates. I need to send him all this information, picking the songs. And then, let me see, I picked the songs with him. Henry, song list. So we picked songs. I said, here's a bunch, and you pick the ones you like the most. I was like, I'm happy to pick more, but here's some. And that's like how we did it. And then I showed him like how to edit things in Blackboard together. But does that help? What are some other questions, Emily?
No, that definitely helped. My original question was more in regard to when the students are redoing assignments, which I wasn't clear about
Oh,
because it's
word.
late here. But I also had this was another question I had, like kind of with my where
Perfect.
do I begin part. So this was really helpful. But I think my other question was,
Okay, you froze
well,
for a
what if
second.
they
At
all
first, I was like, did
redo
I
it?
froze for a second?
Oh, did I?
You
Did I
froze for a
cut out?
second, but I got you.
Okay.
Well, like the problem of the redo, which is Lauren's problem too. And I see a couple of heads nodding. Katie's got her head nodding too. So I think that's the thing that I agree with everybody of like there's an obnoxious element to like redo, come on. Like the realistic thing is I've also noticed by creating that I don't have that many redos. Because I'm making things as clear as I can. I'm just generally across the board, people are turning in better work because I'm not necessarily needing them to get 100% on what would have been an old assignment. In reality, if I was gonna make them out, y'all talked about it as like a B- is a retake. In reality, I would say a B level work is probably what I'm looking for most of the time. Like, as in, right, like A level work, but maybe a couple of mistakes here or there, or like, as long as they get the big idea of what the assignment is, if they can mostly play the song, I don't mind if they have a hiccup, like, I don't mind. It's like, did they recover well? Like, but to me, it's like, is the groove totally off? Is there a pitch? Like, the common one with learning songs is like, you brought this common song and you didn't even notice that the melody changes in the second verse, like, oh, surprise, there's a bridge, like things like that, all those things that we know. So it's like, do that again and like actually learn the bridge to Country Roads, you know what I mean? So yeah, I know everybody knows that struggle. So
Thanks. That's helpful. And I was curious too, do a lot of students end up utilizing that, or is that more of a worry than a practicality from what you found?
it is annoying to be on that, like doing, and the conflict is I know students feel crushed when they have to do a redo. A lot of times it's really defeating, especially because it's like if it's in one of those, like something that's displayed in class, leading an intervention, playing a song, something like that. It sucks for them to be like, man, I got to come to office hours or something now. They really feel like they've been called to the principal's office. And it's like, that's when my next move is like, when that happens, I just try to be really generous with my time with them. Cause it's like, you're not in trouble. This is actually great. We can work through this. So, on that level, I find it to be actually a really good connection point with the students and me showing like, hey, I see that you did that. That's awesome. Like, you're doing a good job. And to like tell them that, because they could just not show up, right? They could just not do it. Like, like they had that choice too. So it shows me something about their resiliency, right? And we're working on that. I was like, I'm telling you that technically something's not good enough, and that sucks. I know that doesn't feel good, but you did it anyways. Like, that's building something in you. Um, and I recognize the power dynamic, like you're saying, of like, I told you something wasn't good enough and you have to redo it. And like, you don't have any like choice, right? Like, that's part of, we talk about that like equitable mindset. I'm like, yes, I understand that is to an extent reinforcing that power dynamic. But I also think it's one of those things of like, on a real world level, I'm also like really trying to work and hope sure that you feel comfortable with these things that I think are important about being a therapist that we've agreed on, that are part of the competencies. And this is how I think we demonstrate those things. And if I care about you, I'm not going to let it slide. Right. Like, I'm trying to hold you to what I think is important. For written things, that's where I find it annoying, to be honest, because it's like, that's when I get back to what Lauren was saying of like, I got to email them. I've got to chase them down a little bit and make sure that they know that I told them that it has to be redone. And then, of course, then you look and it's like, it's not in there. Why isn't it in there yet? Please turn that in. You know what I mean? So I do find that annoying, to be quite honest. But yeah, I agree. To me, it's that's like, I think about that and it's like, that's the interruptions and that I signed up for, right? Like that's the stuff that never feels like wasted time, even if it's frustrating. It's like, and I've definitely had some students where it was like other faculty members had given up on that student and just like giving a little bit of extra time, like to the point where it's like that student did get fired from a practicum, right? Like that's a bad look. And you know what? She bounced back and she just got an internship and she's so pumped that she's like, I want to come and come say hi. It's my first week this week. Can I come by the office this week? I was like, that's so great. Like, and what does that say to somebody about how they can believe, if they're working in addiction recovery and somebody relapses, right? Like, how are you going to respond to that? Like, again, these are not equivalent. I'm not saying that these are equivalent things, but it is building empathy of like, you know, how can you help someone build resiliency? Um, and to me, I think, yeah, these get at some of the bigger picture aspects of like why we're here that gets us out of the weeds of all the stupid school stuff. It's important. I love school, but sometimes we're, you know, kept in these bowling alleys when it's like that's not the bumper rails are not quite it, right? So now we've definitely hit pretty much time. So that was some good diversions. I definitely am an open book with these things. If you email me and I don't get back to you, just email me again. I promise. I'm pretty decent at getting back, but if for whatever reason it's this semester feels extra busy to me. So if you don't hear something, just do it again, and I will try to get back to you. But I would say there's other people here who are clearly doing the work too. And again, if this all just sounded like too much, I don't think it's a big deal. You don't have to change your life. I'm not trying to sell you life insurance. But it works for me really well. And I'm hopeful to like find some avenues to like publish a little bit on this in a written way so that people can look at these things from a music therapy perspective. So if any of y'all are super excited and want to do stuff like that, that's definitely like my big area of weakness to continue pushing myself out of my comfort zone. So let me know if you're super psyched about that idea and I will pull myself across the finish line. But thanks everybody. My email is chris.millett at Louisville, Louisville, Louisville.edu. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. We so appreciate it. Before we go, really quick, Alejandra has just something real quick for all of us.
Thank you again, Chris. Thank you for coming and preparing the presentation for us. Thank you for everyone who attended. I know we're all tired and it's late and it's just really nice to have you here. As Lauren mentioned in the beginning of the talk, we are really hoping to get more people into the committee. So if you're interested, please let one of us know. We are both in the southeastern region. We would love to have people from other regions. So yes, just send us an email because we really want to grow the committee to at least 4 or 5 or even 6. And then the last thing, many of you are program directors and you have been so gracious to answer a questionnaire. Hopefully, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I recently sent a survey out. I'm working with a theory colleague who is on his way out. He's about to retire, but he's very interested in music therapy education within music therapy practice and curriculum. So if you haven't filled out the survey and you have a few minutes, I would love your thoughts so much. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I will be sending out the Zoom recording and also uploading it to our faculty forum YouTube page. So have a wonderful night. Have a great start to your semester. Thank you.